Okay, it's live now. Hi, Hannah.
Hi, Hannah.
Oh, dear.
Okay.
Well, we're all doing all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a crazy week for us all. We all had to go to a ELL night on Wednesday till 7 in Burlington, so that, took out a chunk of time that could have been doing, other stuff, but it was great. It was super fun.
Oh, it was so much fun.
So fun.
Then we had our wordless book
But then we had a lot of other things we had to do after that and commuting home. And anyways, we're all tired and happy. It's Friday.
Yeah.
I don't mean to speak for us all, but
yeah.
Okay. Wow. So we all had to do the summarize the 3, correct?
Yeah.
A lot of that was review for me.
Yeah,
some sped. And I also was kind of like, I get the whole connection with how, you're not, just because they don't speak English well, you're not supposed to automatically assume that they have a learning disability or something.
Yes. Yeah.
But I felt like it focused more on
parent consent.
That and just students with special needs. I didn't feel like it really talked a lot about ELL students that much. I feel like a lot of the scenarios or situations related to what you do with a student that has special needs. I don't know.
I thought the court cases were where they specifically talked about more ELL, but everything else I agree with you is more from SPED.
You're right. Right. Yeah, I guess that's what it was. The court cases that were more
I was the one new thing for me was the consent decrees. Is that how you say that?
Oh, consent decrees.
Right. That's what.
Okay, sorry.
That's how I've been pronouncing it.
So I just thought that those court cases and those decisions were law, and I didn't know that they weren't law and that it was more a decision that was made that had high influential, oh my god, you guys, it just has impact where people follow that then. So that was something new that I didn't know.
So if you don't so I actually know a student that's that was in our program that without saying her name that went through exactly this.
Really?
And so it shows how recent it is, but what happened was so she's Korean and her family only speak Korean and she knows limited English.
Okay.
And she was in elementary school and she shared this for our for the Bridging Barriers Migrant Youth class. And what ended up happening was the teacher called the parents and her in, and she was always really quiet in class. And then the teacher was like, I'm gonna have to have you translate for your parents, okay? And then the little girl's like, okay, and then she was, I want you to tell your parents that I think you're, and then said mentally slow, but said,
are you kidding me?
And then said can you please tell your parents that? And then she had to turn and she said in Korean, she thinks I'm doing very good in the class. And didn't tell her parents, but she's like, yeah, she goes, can you tell them why I think so? And was having her translate to her parents why she thinks that she's mentally so, but it was just because she was an English language learner. And she was
that is so sad.
And it was really sad because she was crying, telling the story. And she said how it's just so hard because you think
it's criminal. I feel
I literally can't shut my mouth.
I know.
Yeah. And the actual repercussions to the teacher,
oh yeah. And then you see this case of Diana who's wrongfully placed in special needs, but then you think the damage that's doing to the child. Because for me, I immediately thought of her, and I always think of her whenever I hear cases like this, and I'm this is still happening. And the fact she had to translate that for her parents, I don't know, it was just really sick. And that's why I knew it wasn't a law, or people were at least breaking the law. But it's to me, I can't even imagine having that situation. And it scares me that if we hadn't been taking these ELL classes, what if as a teacher I would have put the kid in that weird situation because I didn't know or something.
Well, I feel that teacher was wrong in 2 parts, where
a lot of parts.
Yeah. You can't even have your student translate, even it was talking about the siblings, right?
It shows bias and everything.
Yeah. And That just doesn't sound like a good idea to start with.
Oh yeah.
But
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Oh yeah.
Was the siblings part the one within that video with the
Yeah.
3 different scenarios? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
I
know they're like,
yeah,
I know.
it's similar, obviously, because it's all connected in this
Yeah.
discussion. But I guess in a way, like I tried to I guess relate to it in a way. I don't know if you guys were able to read through everything that I wrote. There's a lot, but I had just talked about how even in a different situation, it doesn't feel good. Like when you're put in a role that you're not meant to be put in. Like I've had that experience when after my parents got divorced and I lived with my dad and my 2 brothers, and I ended up, it felt like I was the surrogated wife in a way, because my dad would come to me with stuff that trying to figure out with my brothers because they were younger than me, and it was so weird and so annoying, and I hated it, and I was just like, I just wanted to be me, and me as a sister and as a daughter of my dad, and it was not, I mean, it was his fault, but he didn't know what he was doing at all, and he still never will, which is okay, out of that now. But I was relating that experience to what they must feel like they are just never meant to be in that position where they're having to do that important translating stuff and being talked, or their sibling being talked about with in a professional, I don't know, conversation. I don't know, it just was
even if they're adult siblings, I feel like
No.
it's still a boundary that's being crossed.
Yeah.
And I know that in some cultures, the older siblings do feel that they share a similar responsibility to their parents, and not parenting their younger siblings, but I don't know, just watching out for them. But regardless, I feel like it's still respecting them being a sister or brother or whatever. And, I just thought that was really interesting, and that with I don't know if that conversation was actually a real conversation or more of a demonstration of what could happen with a teacher talking to 2.
I was confused.
It felt like it was pretty fake. I don't know, what do you call it? I don't know, set up. I don't know what I'm trying to
not
say.
authentic.
Yes, exactly. And so I was thinking about is that common for teachers to look into those outlets of ways of communicating faster? The one guy was oh, I have a good idea, my neighbor could come and translate, and I'm that's just weird, why? I just feel it's kind of, I mean, maybe it's not common sense, but to me it would be to you don't overstep those boundaries of grabbing outside sources that aren't professionally brought in, I guess.
I don't know if this is a thing, maybe I should patent it, but I feel like these days we have technology, and I'm sure there's translators that can be Skyped in or something.
Quicker access.
Gotta be a way to do it in a professional way
that's true. Very
from,
true.
random people in the community.
Yeah, I definitely. There should be if
You
there
must be
isn't
certified or something.
Yeah. Because they were making it sound like it's such a extensive process and it can't happen quickly.
But for certain languages.
But I feel like they were even saying faxing. I'm we don't fax anymore. It
Yeah.
must be an old video.
Did they mention what language Osmond spoke? Because he was the one who they couldn't find a translator fast enough for him because they couldn't figure that out with his parents.
I don't remember there be them specifying what language he spoke, but maybe he did.
I guess I do get the time restraint, because he was the one who, he got in a fight or something? What was his, no, of the movie.
Yeah.
I know, right? I think it was just that his parents needed to know the concerns and fully consent to potential further action. I don't know,
was it?
Wasn't he saying, he was saying swear words.
Swear words.
He was saying swear words.
Yeah.
So I get the time. It's
right.
It's not we're gonna talk about grades that happened over the quarter. It's
it's just
this is something that we really need
problem.
to talk about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But still,
Well, and the parent, it was to where the teacher didn't seem to know the parents at all, and so I made a comment this is a good reason as to why the teachers should know the community. I mean, doing this family engagement, because I felt I learned so much about the different families at Allen.
Right.
Oh my gosh,
And
I found out like things about my case studies, like not my case study student, but like two of my students, just because their family came in, and I was in the room with one of the counselors at Allen, and so she was doing, we were in the same room.
Yeah.
So she was like doing, I don't know, she's just talking to them, and I found out so much information from like this one family member, like communicating it to this counselor, and I was just sitting there, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
It was a
not know
big
anything about
family.
this.
Yeah.
It
It felt that way.
It was
For
for like
sure.
the teachers are just running out and like
I
picking up the
loved it.
babies.
And
And I
I
was
was like, I know.
Yeah.
I want this.
I know. Baby in my room. I was like,
I know.
So sweet.
It really gets me.
Yeah, that didn't seem present in that video though.
Yeah, I
Like,
felt
I
like
know-
there was one of them who knew the kids more than the others.
Yeah.
And I kind of talked about how, like, just the importance of talking with teachers. We kind of talked about it last week.
Mhm.
But, like, just communicating, like, about background stuff. If it's, I don't know how much you can share.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, about home life. But, yeah, that would be really nice.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Another takeaway from the staged video that it was, maybe the one good thing that I pulled away from it too was that they were doing everything that they could to keep the parents informed and follow that consent order that they need to do or whatever, like, or that process. I guess that's what I was like, okay, well, they're putting an effort to, you know, make their kids' parents aware, but it also, like you were saying, sounds like they don't have any information of the parents already, and like the teacher asking like, do these parents speak English? Do these don't? And I'm like, what? You don't know that yet? Like, unless we don't know what time of year, if it was like that, right after the first week, or but what, I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like you need to have a relationship with the parents before it's a negative focus on the kid. Like,
Oh, for sure. That
I
shouldn't be the first time you talk to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just feels like an attack.
Yeah.
And
Right.
Yeah, that, and I think that's like all about like what we've been learning in Woodrum, where it's like you try and make it to where you like give ample opportunities to catch someone doing good things instead of just focusing on catching them in bad acts. And so that's what I felt, and that's what I kind of wrote about too. But I'm kind of glad we were still on the same page, because I thought it was really staged. I'm gonna feel really bad if it wasn't staged.
I know, right?
That guy sounded super
Well,
scripted.
and it sounded like when I watched one of those videos on IEP plans, like, today we're going to, and I'm just like, that does not
could
sound
be,
the real deal.
like, if they're not able to actually film actual
Probably,
meetings.
not,
So
because
that's like,
it's,
this is similar to something we did
That's
talk about,
true.
but we're gonna like change the names and
cut them
write
some
down.
slack.
Yeah.
So,
But yeah, even as like when I'm a parent, I don't want my first interaction with the teacher to be when my kid's in trouble. You know, like it just blows my mind that that's even.
Yeah.
But
Just seeing if there's anything else on that I needed to bring up before.
I feel like a lot of it overlaps, which is really good because it helps like really solidify the information. But
Right, for sure.
I really like that word solidify.
Me too.
I use it too much.
I really love
I
it.
love that word. Just solidifies everything.
Do we want to talk about chapter 2?
Yeah, we
I'm
can do
down with that.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything else I wanted to add. I think I could.
Something that I loved that I won't really go into too much detail, but just to bring it up, is that I loved how in this chapter they had what schools and teachers can do. Because I feel like a lot of times they're like, don't do this, and it's like, but what can I do
What
to
can I
change
do?
it?
That's a
And
good
so-
point.
More
Yeah.
explicit ways.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
totally agree
Yeah.
with that.
So I absolutely love that they incorporated that.
The list of the guidelines.
Yes.
Mhm.
I want to print
That's when you know you're a teacher.
Right. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
I feel like all those questions regarding chapter 2 just reminded me, which one of the second to last or the last question has to do with the funds of knowledge and family engagement. I feel like that's literally the basis for like answering those first couple questions of like sustaining diversity and community. Well, that's actually not in this chapter. Oh yeah, sustaining community. Okay, in the classroom. It's like, is this a great question? Okay. Anyways, I just feel like what we can do as a school and classroom and teacher is, making sure that we're really being intentional of incorporating the community around us. And I kind of talked about it as like each student is only bringing like half of them to school with them. Like their other half is like where their home is and what is influencing that home and their family and friends that might not even be a part of the school already. There's just like so much more to the student outside of the classroom. So I thought that was kind of at least for me, a good visual of like what each of our students are. It's only half of them when they're at school, and
totally.
Yeah. So
I feel like I took way too much of a philosophical look at this in the sense of democracy and how on page 30 it just really goes into how we teach democracy, and we're everyone gets a say, everyone gets a vote, and then the majority is this, and how that teaches even if the majority thinks something, it doesn't mean it's right. And I just really went into that. I was why don't we teach this is the democracy, you need to teach democracy works if there's full participation, responsibility, and thinking as a whole community, not thinking for yourself. And I was just oh my gosh, why don't we learn this? Why don't we teach this in school and in the classroom? You can use democracy in your classroom and be what do you think we should do for this, and be what's good for full participation, what's good for is this responsible, is this good for all of us? And then I just went back to our political system right now, and I was just I wonder if the way we were taught democracy isn't a correct way if we would have such a different, I don't know, if we were able to think about whole community and not self. And
there's a way to
what that guide
look like. You could give options. And still make their decisions.
And how building this belief, it makes people believe that couldn't happen. No, I can't do that, or it'll never work. When he talks about that, I was just so I really hope I bring this with me in my classroom, because I don't know, it just made me think not just for classroom settings, but when we go into society and we're participants in it.
Because we're raising people that are going to be a part of our community.
So,
and then you think how well were we taught democracy, because our generation is someone don't have a tendency to vote, and so it's really, do we believe our voice?
I think
is
that
heard?
our I don't know if this is how you feel, but I feel we really buy into the we don't matter, my vote doesn't matter, that's why people didn't vote, or something like that. So how can we stop that? How can we make people know that they matter? And that
very true. I guess starting when they're all little in the classroom, it's showing that they're all valued and
not showing that just because the majority thinks this, it's the best thing.
Oh no.
And I was just that's the biggest takeaway I took from that chapter. I was because the right thing to do isn't always what happens. So
it's huge on celebrating and valuing all the different outlooks. That's just what makes each community so diverse.
I think it's hard too, because when we incorporated democracy into our society, it was when some people didn't get a vote. So it's our whole premise for our society was built on something that didn't even live up to what it was supposed to be in the very beginning.
It's supposed to be fair.
It's supposed to be fair and everything. And I just feel even though I personally am I'm really happy we live in a democratic society, that makes me very happy. I do see that it is still flawed and not perfect.
Totally.
And that's what I mean, teach people that you have to participate in order for a democracy. I don't know if you guys saw Obama's speech, but Obama talked about that in one of his speeches. He's you guys need to know that this doesn't work if not everyone does it. And I was just
and not just the presidential election. There's
so much exactly. And then teaching think whole community, think everyone, not just yourself. And I was
yourself.
And it's so difficult because we're all teachers and really are that's what we need, but then there's so many other different groups, like within even like different types of careers and jobs where that's so different. Like I feel like in all of the business world, it's all about you and how high you can get up, you know, and like, I mean, I'm sure within their, like, once they're in the business that they are in, like, they have that sense of community and, like, democracy, I guess. But, like, getting to those places, I feel like no one's thinking in that mindset, I guess. And so it's difficult to, like, get that covered over all different groups of people, I guess, and what they do in life. Because, like, all of us were like, how do you know?
Exactly. And then even as teachers, though, you have to think, we're in the mindset of, like, I'm going to be the best teacher I can be. And we still have that, like, individualist mindset. But that's because that's what capitalism does. That's, like, what it is. And we're like a hybrid of capitalism and socialism. But it's where, like, I don't know. I've seen so many people, like, in our program that it's like they're just hammering away at the studies because they have to get an A. And I'm someone who tries to get good grades, too. But then I realized, like, am I doing that for my students, or am I doing that for myself?
Yeah.
And
that's an awesome question.
Great point. Wow. Not just to get the grade and check off that you've completed it, but like really. How can I
it's
apply
really
this?
hard though, because like we've been raised to like if you don't get a good grade, you're a failure.
That's a great point.
Or like GPA is forever. Like
C is average.
Yeah.
But if we get a B, we're like,
well,
average.
and like in wondering, like we can't get a C.
We
can't be average. Like they're telling us that. So it's like, I have to get an A.
It's a tough.
And it's hard because if we write a lesson that we feel good about, and then we do the lesson and it goes over really well, our kids are learning, but still we don't get that grade we want. It's like, but was my lesson as good as it could have been? Like,
or like
even, you know?
I guess that's the thing though. Teachers, like, there's always ways to improve. So I feel like it should be more of a completion and like effort thing. Like. I don't know.
Which is like how some of our professors, I think, grade.
Oh, totally.
They're like, awesome
like,
job.
A.
Exactly. Everyone's getting A. And then like there's some aren't.
They're
like
taking every step.
It's hard because I feel like we're learning how to do all of this stuff. So we're kind of on like a scale. And, you know, I feel like later on through the quarter, the expectations can be raised because we're like growing and learning.
Right.
But in the beginning, it's really hard because it's like, I don't know this stuff
You're
yet.
getting a feel for it.
Yeah, you're like trying things out and you're reading the articles,
Definitely.
techniques.
Definitely.
Minor rant, but
it's good. It's good talk.
I like minor rants a lot.
Yeah, me too.
I really like it.
I was like really into this. I was really thinking about it.
It was awesome.
Yeah. Do you want to do our jigsaw stuff?
Oh, she sure could.
Whoop, whoop.
I'm trying to think if we have any questions.
I know.
We could like
thinking about that too right now with either of those.
I mean, like, I don't know, this is way too broad, and I feel like she won't be able, like, were we taught democracy wrong? Like, getting told, you know, in school, like, this is what our forefathers did, this is this, the majority wins. Like, it's like, so, well, like, even what should I do? Like, should I teach how the book is going to tell me to teach it, or should I be like, actually, do the right thing, though?
Yeah, how can we correctly teach democracy in our classrooms?
I feel like that's a good question.
Fine. That's not something that you can just ask Google and they've got it. And that's what I always base it off of. Like, she's like, don't ask me a question that you can type in yourself online. Right. It's like more broad. And it's minute 23 and a half roughly.
Can you say that one more time?
How can we effectively teach democracy in our classroom? Because, I mean, even though it's like, we're like, it's a democracy, really, we're standing up there and going, do this, do that. And it's like this kind of a dictatorship.
Did you guys ever have teachers that were like, this isn't a democracy? Like,
yes.
You know, and I'd be like, okay.
Yeah, I feel like even switching the desks from facing all forward to being like group things, that changes the atmosphere so much.
Yeah.
So much.
Well, even in like our you know, college classes, I feel like I can tell a difference between like the classes that I have where the teacher is transparent, is like, okay, we're gonna make an adjustment today because it seems like this is where we're at and not here. Like that just like makes everyone feel so good and safe and secure and like together in it together to be successful. And then there's other classes where you feel so none of that, and it's just different, night and day difference, I guess. So we're still experiencing both right now. For sure. And the majority, I feel like, is still, you know, not working together. It's more just that individualistic mindset. So jigsaw. Oh, okay. So were you saying that did you do the higher order? Okay, you did. Cool. But you didn't answer them. You just
I answered them. I didn't write it down.
Oh, okay. I wrote 3 higher order thinking questions. I didn't answer them, but I gave a reason why that could be asked. Yeah. So it was talking about liberal democracy, and my first one was like about comparing Jefferson's decision of who should be a part of participation in the political process in that time, how it's continued to affect the political system today. That's, of course, like a very advanced question for students, but I feel like you could, I don't know, after like teaching units on this, that would be like a good question for them to at least be aware and realize, like,
they don't have to come to a conclusion, but just
just getting them thinking, I think would be really great. And like how even like Jefferson's decision was all like based off of like the majority white people and or men, I guess, in particular, and how that still has affected today with like politics and how the majority are still men, white men in office of whatever. Like, it just has a huge impact, and it's still like that one decision at that point has like not been changed in any way. It's just kind of like crazy for them to think about.
Sorry. I just interrupted you. Keep talking.
What?
No,
that's it. That's it.
No, mine doesn't matter. What? Oh my god. Okay, I was just thought of something really exciting. Montana elected their first person of color mayor since the state had become like a mayor. The first time. Yeah, it just happened yesterday.
What?
Sorry, I just thought of it. Yeah,
it's huge.
I know.
That's the first.
I'm not. But I mean, that happened yesterday.
Wow,
so
that's awesome.
since Montana became a state, the first person of color to like hold office as a mayor was elected yesterday.
Was it?
And it was my friend's like dad. It
What?
just made me really happy. Yeah, I voted, and I was like, we were all waiting for it, and I found out last night. Yeah. So just letting you guys know, it kind of relates. Yeah, it was in Helena. That's where I'm from. Yeah. So that was really exciting. I got really excited for that. Sorry.
No, that's great. That's totally related. Yeah, for sure.
I know. So that's just crazy though to also think like Montana's never had a person of color.
That's not
crazy. That is amazing though.
2017 though. It's okay.
I'm really glad we're in a
progress.
Oh yeah, I'm really glad we're in a group that's not like, well, of course Montana didn't have a mayor, but I'm just glad that it's like, that's so insane. Like,
I know.
Geez, like, and especially with like all of the problems that have been going on in our country, like, and the division, like, that is huge.
Yeah, he beat out a Republican who had held the position for 4 terms.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Was he on the Republican ballot too, or no?
Oh, okay. You guys do. Wait, what do you mean?
No, like
I feel like elections in Washington. Yeah, he was Democrat.
Yeah, that in itself is big too.
Yeah, honestly. Well, Montana's a weird state because we elect. We're a red state when it comes to the presidential election, but like our governor is a Democrat.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then one of our senators is a Democrat, and the other one's a Republican.
How does that work?
Because Montana's a weird purple state certain times, but then like when it comes to the presidential election, it always goes red.
Interesting.
No, it is.
Okay. That's cool.
I like how that's really how it's supposed to be, where there's that, like, there's
Yeah, we have, like,
difference, and then it's like,
there's
how
really-
does that work?
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah, on like social issues, I'd say that Montana is pretty purple. On like, or like blue, and then on like gun laws, like that's red. Like that's obviously, or like hunching. Yeah.
Which I understand that
Yeah.
there, because it's like they don't have all those urban cities where that could be a threat. And,
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
so
yeah. Well, and like good point about it is that like I had to take like hunter safety.
Yeah.
Like everyone should have to take hunter safety.
yeah,
and
no,
like
in
do
order
it.
to
Yeah.
have it done when
Exactly.
and if ever given the opportunity.
Yeah.
It's just
And like
important.
what's it called, like money and stuff, that's pretty red, I would say, like across the board.
Mm.
Financial like things, that's pretty conservative, but
Mhm.
yeah, that was a really cool thing that
Wow.
happened in my state yesterday, and I was really happy about it.
Change.
Yeah. The small wins.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's cool that it's so close to home. Like,
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
that
I
was
like
that
interrupted you. I felt really bad.
No,
Sorry.
that, no,
I,
that's my
I
day.
literally had just finished
Okay.
my reason why.
Yeah.
I guess then my second question was on like recalling. So having students or whoever think about the primary goal in liberal democracy. So it's important to understand. What am I saying? Okay, it's important to understand because this is important for us to know and hold to in order to sustain a community within and outside of our classroom. So kind of what we already talked about, like reasons why we should encourage this. And then the last one was just, did I give a reason? Oh, I did. I just didn't hold it. Okay. Analysis, which is how does having an individualistic mindset in today's society create consequences for ourselves? So, and then how does it affect the classroom? So, like, having that individualistic mindset, like, how does that hinder what really should be happening? And the reason why I thought was because it's important to see that today's society values individualized consumerism versus building on one's own community and making it more strongly tied together. Life in our society is not about working together to all reach a common goal. Rather, it is always competing against each other for the very best. This is why we need to be intentional in the classroom with having the student's goal in mind and always working towards those goals as a complete community. Normally I wouldn't read all of that, but I just thought it was like, well, I spent lots of time on this and relating it to the article.
I really liked how that was put,
Yeah,
though,
yeah.
honestly.
Yeah, so yeah, it's just really important to analyze that and realize, like, if we don't work together as a community. Like,
That makes me think of that specific question about what we talked about in ELL 433 about whether or not we teach in an individual. Do you guys remember what I'm talking about? The individual versus the like kind of whole group. Thinking like how in certain countries, like I have the article.
Yeah,
it was from that chapter 2.
I know what you're talking
Cultural
about.
relevant
Yes,
teaching.
and about how
Wait, for
It
what?
was-
What class was this?
ELL 433. It's when she like gave out that. Oh no, 34. It's like when Shannon gave us that article packet.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Yes, it was the long packet.
Yeah.
And it was,
Do you know what I'm
I don't
talking
remember
about?
any
I
of
know
that
what you're
stuff
talking
with me,
about.
but it had to do with like even, isn't it based off of too, like if they're being assessed and like was it about how the problem context didn't relate to their culture
Yeah. Well,
and how they would answer it differently based off of
Based
their,
on whether or
their
not, yeah.
community is.
here it is.
Ah.
It's the features of individualistic or collective cultures.
Yeah.
So, like how the United States ranks the highest out of all of the countries as like how we teach an sorry guys.
Individual.
Yeah, being self-oriented, individual effort favored in business and learning, competition, and overall cooperation. So like even when we're working in a group, we're working in a group because we have to and we need to get a good grade together for ourselves. Like it's not
so true.
like being group-oriented relationships
Yeah.
through business learning, cooperation, and competition. Yeah, that makes me think of that. Like, if we taught more towards like collective
I just
culture.
feel like there's so many benefits to collectively working together versus not. Like, it's just like you're using more than just your own resources of yourself to like be successful. And like, I think when I think of it in that way, I'm like, why don't we all want that?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I get so many people are so competitive with each other, and that's just the way it is. And
Right.
I don't know. I just am like,
And greed.
yeah, all of that. And so, yeah, I just feel like there's just so many benefits to working collectively together. And like, I mean, even like in learning, like when you're working together and talking about like we're doing now, like you just learn so much more having that conversation. And I'm just like, why don't we do more?
And I do think, like, even if you are working in a group to benefit yourself, you're still all growing, you know?
Yeah.
Like, even though it seems a little bit selfish to be like, I want to do good in this group so I get a good grade. It's like, but we're still sharing a lot of great ideas. And working together.
Did you already share your one on biodiversity?
No.
Okay, good, because I was like, I was excited about that one.
I want to hear. Oh, no, you're fine.
Well, it's just that, like, the question, because I read through yours before, like, we came and stuff, and I realized that, like, a lot of the times people will be like, well, what's so wrong? Like, because we're losing languages so frequently. And it's like, well, what's wrong with that? I'm like, well, you lose a piece of culture, but I feel like I can never fully describe why it, like, hurts me the way it does. Like, it makes me physically sick thinking that, like, so many languages are going to die out. So I really loved it being part of the biodiversity, and I just really like that question. I just wanted to hear what you guys had to say about it. So there's a plug for your question.
Do you want to go now?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll go over my questions first. So my first question was relate biodiversity among all species to communities and explain new thinking. So my section really talked about, I mean, it just compared them and, you know, talked about all of the connections and how if you lose, I mean, we're talking about environments right now, right? So like, when you lose one part of the community, it doesn't work. It stops functioning, and one thing overproduces and one thing, you know, like, and that's exactly how our communities are, which is really sad. But and then my second question, I mean, they all really relate, but in what ways might a whole community be harmed if groups are put in margins or defined as less deserving of care and reciprocity? And so this part talked about what is the term? I should have wrote it down. I had it as part of my question originally. Exclusions and value hierarchized, yeah. Archies thinking. So I don't know, I was talking about how our society, like how we have sexism, and it's, I don't know. I wish I would have like reread this before I came. Now I feel bad, but I don't know. It just talks about how we push down certain groups and we have other groups on a pedestal, and how in the long run it like really is detrimental to the whole community, because like every group has so much to contribute to the overall like productivity. And then how might the loss of linguistic diversity, which is what you're talking about, affect the biodiversity of a region? And I chose that one just because, like you're saying, like it's really important to think about how we affect other culture, like communities, cultures, and I'm trying to, I like want to pause it real quick.
No, you're fine.
No, you're
like,
good.
this is okay. Yeah, don't even worry.
It's totally
Also,
fine.
I did this at 2 in the morning, and I don't remember.
That's okay.
But do you want to talk about it so I can like read it?
Okay.
I didn't.
I don't know how to explain it? Like,
I mean, thinking to that, like, I relate that to, like, Native Americans and how they, like, that's a very specific group in the United States. I mean, there's others, but that's a very specific one that have lost, like, their language.
Yeah.
And only, like, their grandparents or great-grandparents even know it. And so, like, even trying to teach it isn't is hard. It's difficult, like, to keep it.
It's really hard because I feel like we've seen a lot of good come out of being able to communicate, like, globally. And so I think a lot of people are like, oh, why aren't we all just, like, mainstreaming this language so then we can all, like, you know, grow together. But again, like, there's just so much that when you lose your language, you're losing a lot of your culture. And
that was a huge thing that I learned last spring in my AMS state class on Native American, and like how, I mean, this goes with a lot of other languages and stuff, but there's just a huge tie to culture and language. And so as soon as they lose that, then they are losing a huge part of their culture when they don't continue that.
Well, and did you take it with like the Lummi tribe and stuff?
I took it with, he's
a member of the Lummi tribe, like on the council?
No, he's from the Midwest.
Oh.
What's his name? Oh my goodness. He's from Fairhaven College. Shoot. Danny something. I think Danny.
Mine was David Oreo. Oreo.
This guy is like in his 80s. Like, I'm like, you're still teaching. Like,
is he a member of your tribe?
What?
Is he a member of your tribe?
Yes. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's like SOI or Sioux tribe. Sioux tribe. Yeah, I was like the X. There's no X. Did
he talk about at all like his anger towards that title, or at all?
The Sioux tribe?
Yeah.
No.
I mean, a lot of I know what you're saying.
Yeah, because it's a combination of 14 different tribes.
Oh, right. Which he did go into explain, like he showed like what would you call that, like.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Let me think of it.
Not like a pyramid, but like he's branched off. I don't know the tree map of like what huge to. Anyways, but he didn't talk, and he was really funny. He was very like, each tribe has their own way of living, and a lot of them have jokes in different ways. That he's like, I am a huge jokester, and he's like, I take some things seriously, other things not. But like the huge takeaway for me was that that like a lot of like white people coming in to look at their problems are really not their problems. Like that's what we think are problems for them are not actually problems for them. Like that's not important to them.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's a whole tangent. But
it's
just like
I love
like
stuff.
but it's always something that I think about too, like in relation to like I don't know, like if we do have kids that are coming from certain tribes and like what we already assume about potentially the lifestyle they're living in, like that might not be affecting them the way we think that it might be affecting them. Yeah, that makes sense. So
well, and like David, what's really funny is he goes, one of the things that our tribe's really upset about, because he's like one of the head members of like the Lummi tribe, and he's like he might be like the vice principal of the Lummi college too.
Cool. Yeah.
He was really smart, but he'd like get like really angry. He was really angry that none of us read the newspaper, and he always read the newspaper.
Same.
And then he something that he talked about that really made him upset was he goes, something that upsets me is the fact that like racism's term has been redefined, and he goes, it was redefined by a sociologist, and he goes, and now it's institutionalized racism has become racism, and he goes, and what you did was take away the colored man's opportunity to be racist. And it's like you took away something from like us, and then he goes, by saying we can't be racist, and he goes, I can be as racist as I want, and like I don't know, it's just really funny the fact that that's a battle, whereas like I feel like a lot of people are like, there's no such thing as reverse racism, but to him it's like, no, I want to be able, like, have the right to be racist. And it's like, that's such a weird, like, I never would have thought that that was a problem, I guess. And he's like, yeah, we've been trying to fight against that. And it was just like a really weird, like, I never would have thought that that would have been
That's like a crazy concept. Right? Like, wow, because then it's like
completely makes sense.
It completely makes sense. institutionalized racism makes sense as well. And so it's like
it's a weird. Yeah, I remember talking about that too in my class.
I know.
Wow.
Yeah, because a lot of people like talked about like he was talking. He's like, so what about like racism? Can you define it? And one of the girls said like defined it and then did institutionalized racism, which it used to be institutionalized racism, and then they just took off the institutionalized and turned it to where that's just racism now, and that's been a very new definition.
Right.
And so it was just really funny because everyone was like, who agrees that that's the definition of racism? And it was like only white people rose their hand, and he goes. Yeah, and he's like,
wow.
Yeah, and he goes, because we should be able to be racist, and like it was this weird like he isn't racist, but he wants that right, and he goes, I have friends who are racist, but what can I say? Like technically they're not, and he goes, but they're racist against other cultures, and he's like, and so I don't know,
it's a weird,
it's so
abstract
weird
thing to think about.
Yeah, like my mind is everywhere, and like I'm just like, whoa,
Trying
like
to make sense of it all.
I know, and I have like no stance on whether yes we should or yes we shouldn't, but I was just like, that is so. I don't know, it was something where it was like an issue that I never thought affected a group of people as much as it does.
Yeah, no, it's true.
So yeah.
I'm gonna be thinking about that like for a really long time.
Right.
Huh. Yeah. One thing that my spring service learning when we first came into the program was I went to the Nooksack the after school thing. Do you?
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't, but
And,
I heard about this.
it just made me think about like everything we've been talking about is they had language every Wednesday at that after school
like their language or
their language.
Oh,
so they
so
went
nice.
and like learned so like they would take turns with kindergarten through third, and then 4th through 7th I think it was, they would like go to a language class taught by one of the elders. And also in the room that I was in, everything was in like English, but also in Nooksack, like their language, and a lot of them, like it was just really cool to see because the person that was running the program, she was just talking about how like it's weird because there's a gap of super old people in the tribe that like really know the language and want them to learn it, and then there's like this gap of like these kids' parents not knowing it,
right?
And then like now these kids getting an opportunity to learn it, and it was just really cool to see. And like going to the class, going to the class was really like, oh, this is fun. Like I don't know, I really liked it, enjoyed it. Yeah,
That's amazing.
It's nice. Yeah, I wish I could have experienced that.
What class was that for?
It was like 310 Kate's class.
Yeah.
With like the service learning on it. Yeah.
That's really cool. I feel like my service learning didn't really have like an ELL side of it.
Oh really?
Yeah. Like I was in it was fun.
I mean, we technically didn't need to have an ELL component to
Yeah,
that,
I thought
but
that it
I just
had
like
to
I just happened to get that one. Which I was like,
I think
okay.
I had to have some sort of like diverse group of students or something like that.
Well, a lot of people went to like wasn't it Cordata?
It was an older one.
I was
Oh,
at Alderwood.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, mine was just an after school, but it was like, I mean, the majority was Latino, and then there were a few just like lower income white kids that were there. But I don't feel like I had like it was the first quarter of woodring, and I just felt like I didn't have any of the knowledge to like recognize things.
Like
there,
looking back now,
like I was just totally unaware. Like I just was there, just like kids after school. But now, like I could like reflect so much more deeply if I like knew all that I know now, which is really cool to think about. And like
we still have it. Yeah.
Right. But I don't even know how we got there. Here.
I know.
We have such
But
a
it's
good
good. It's
discussion.
good.
I know. I love
this.
this.
I love it. No, it's great.
I know.
I think it's all really important things to talk about, and in some way it relates to
Yeah.
everything we're learning now.
Exactly. Yeah.
What was both of your jigsaws?
Mine was essentially create a visual that displays the importance of
Right.
like sustainable community. And so what I did was this. But what's really sad is on the computer I made it a lot cooler, but then when I transferred it over, it was really hard to do anything with graphic in the discussion.
Right.
So what I had diversity, like all of these things are connected to get to sustainable community. And like you had to describe it in a short summary. And I said sustainability is more than a statement. It includes diversity, which is like biodiversity as well, economy, the trades of goods and services, ideology, thinking beyond yourself, and then interdependence and political and strong democracy. And it all leads to a sustainable community. And I feel like a lot of the times there are several pieces of this missing, like interdependence. Like I feel like that is something that is void.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking back at like history and just all the times where elements of these things were missing, and then it led to a collapse in the society. And so I don't know, like I felt like this is something that needs to be not only like in the community we live in, but in our classroom community as well. And I don't know, that's just kind of what I really thought about. Yeah. It wasn't too flashy, I'm sorry.
No, but it makes sense. It's very interesting.
Guys, I don't know if I downloaded the wrong thing or if there was something old on here, but I literally wrote I was neither A or D because I thought only A and D did the jigsaw. So I didn't know C or B had it. I didn't even see yours either.
Oh.
So I didn't do it. I'm sorry.
Maybe we can look it up.
Yeah, I was just looking. Because right when you said what were your two, I was like, I didn't have them this week. No, I'm sorry. Mine says, okay, C. It says create a structured overview or preview guide that would support a level 1 ELL on the concept of democracy, sustainability. This can be in the way, whatever way you want. Well,
shoot.
Jeez, that's like a whole lesson
project.
plan.
Whoa.
Yeah, sorry. I don't know
No.
what happened.
I don't know.
Crazy.
I mean, L1.
So that's very basic.
Yeah.
So
I felt like what we did in ELL, where we learned about the different branches of government and like kind of like that in the language.
Swedish.
Yeah.
That's
I feel like that's
to give them like a comparison.
Yes.
They can see different
Something they know.
pictures, visuals.
Instead of just telling them like this is what this is.
Yeah.
I really like that.
That's a great.
That was a really good idea. Like on the spot.
Well, ask me like, how can I structure this? I was like, how about we reuse a golden classic? That was amazing. I think about that all the time. I feel like everyone in our program should do that lesson.
Right.
I really
I
feel
totally
like
agree.
every
That
person.
should be. I feel like that should be part of the 310.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I completely agree.
Like
That would be
We
great.
should, we should.
Because I feel like no matter where you are, you're bound to have at least one ELL student.
I was
Yes.
just talking about this in ELL. We had like it was a writer's workshop and it was the chapter over ELL. And like we went through it so quickly and like I read the chapter 2 and I was reading it and I was like, this just seems so obvious, you know?
Yeah.
And then when we went over it as a class, like no one
knew
anything. And I'm at a table with like all of us are LN 481. And I was just like at a table with all ELL, like, and they would like, she was just teaching, like, yeah, like this is what we do. And we were just all sitting there, like we were supposed to do turn-in talks and we're like, yeah, and she's like, what about like our ELL, like, people, like, what do you guys think? And I was just like, I'm just blown away that like some of these teachers are only gonna read this chapter about ELLs.
Yeah.
That's it.
I know.
Scary.
I was like, oh,
And
I don't even know where to start. What do you mean where to support them?
I know.
Yeah, there's so many different
ways.
In our class, we had to make posters and then ask questions at the end. And so one of mine was like, how do you support like newcomers if you have no access to their language and like different things like that. And then people in the class were like, what are newcomers? And I was like, people who don't speak the language. But I was like, oh, they're in different things. And then they're like, those wait, so they're in our classes? And I'm like, they can be in your classes? And I was
They
like,
come here, they go to school.
and I was like, I feel ill prepared teaching the newcomers we have.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're given so many tools, so I'm like, what are they gonna do? I keep thinking everybody has the same
I've seen it in the classroom. During my sched, we had my teacher, my cooperating teacher, she was great, but she also, I don't know when she went to Western like, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, so who knows what it was like then. But we had a new student from like Iran or something, and maybe she did do an introduction. I wasn't there at the very beginning of the day, but I'm curious, like, cause when I was there was like no intentional like inclusion of him or anything. Like he was just like placed in there and like going about everything, and I was just like, this is sad. Like now knowing like all these different things you can do to make them feel more welcomed and being intentional. But
specialists. I was just gonna say that, but
especially for those older teachers that you know,
which is like
even like
good to know that there's like a Beth and a Shannon.
Yeah.
But also like me and Vanessa were talking about it, and we were like, okay, but like ELL has to take PE in health. Don't you think maybe
and we don't even teach people
ELL would take an introduction to ELL? Like, don't you think, like, out of everything in ELL, the one classes that are like, there's like that, those two, like, you know, just thinking like, but like, teachers should know this is like important.
And what worries me is we learn SPED and like to find the warning signs of someone with a possible disability. And a lot of those warning signs are the same with ELL, so it seems like it's just going to continue that cycle of wrongfully putting ELL students into special education. So I am on this bandwagon. I will write letters.
I wish Woodring could have like a little suggestion box at the end and be like, maybe.
Seriously.
It's hard though because we have so many classes we already.
Well, and that's like what we were talking about. We're like, okay, well, we can't like add one more, but also could we like not take PE?
PE does not make sense.
I do not get PE.
I don't get it. I'm taking it right now, and I'm just like,
it was fun.
I mean, I feel like we've all had enough experiences, and we could pair together what we've learned for teaching strategies to teach PE if it ever happened.
Oh, and I feel like the movement thing we got in art when you did the different things, that was way more helpful. Way more helpful.
PE, I just feel like everyone's gone through it. Everyone, like, those are some of everyone's really fun, exciting memories, so it's easy for them to remember, like, different ways to teach PE. But
and there was only one day of doing it in the class.
Credit, and you go like one hour
3 times a week at 8 a.m. And where you just go and play games. Like, I feel like I'm not learning, like, something that I could use.
Well, and it would be cool to do a thing where it's like a mix, where it's movement and how it helps with ELL instruction. And so you're learning how to do those kinetic exercises like you do in PE, because there's only one day where you learned games to play in a classroom, and it's like, that's kind of what I need.
And I didn't even go to that day because she said it was an optional day.
What?
It was a Friday. It was like today, kind of. I think it was like, you know, it's like, or it was during Thanksgiving where it was like half day. Like, you know how they do the half days. I didn't even go to that.
That's funny.
What?
Well, we have like 2
minutes.
2 minutes because I started at 4 minutes after.
Do we
But
wanna talk about the movie?
we should talk about the movie. Maybe what surprised us and what we took away. Maybe I don't know.
I just really loved it. I didn't even feel like I like wrote in my class like
so cool to be a part of that school.
Definitely.
Right?
When I was watching it, I was like, this is like I feel like I'm watching this for a class. Like I genuinely enjoyed all of it. It was so interesting.
And which surprised me the most was the topics discussed in the classroom. Like, for instance, the fact that they had 2 openly gay men come in, and they're like, so we know that in your cultures, a lot of the times.
The principal, right? Or they both right?
One was the principal, and the other one was some part of the district.
Like the fact that they came in, and it's like, that's such a thing where, like, in some cultures, that's just like, no. And the fact that they just came in and like asked questions, and there was like an equal respect. And it was like, I would be so scared to do a unit like that, where it's like confronting people who you know are like from birth, like taught like no. Like that surprised me the most. I thought it was so
I
well
loved
done.
that part because they were all just straight up. They weren't like worried about hurting each other's feelings. They were just asking the questions, and it was
Yeah.
okay, and it wasn't weird, and
It's like a safe
it was just really cool, like how they created that space for that. I don't know. I just feel like I haven't yet experienced something like that where you can really just ask whatever and not be like, oh my gosh, she offended me by asking that one question, instead of just like knowing that they're wondering out of curiosity, like to better understand them and what is important to them. I don't know. It's just like,
there was only one like thing during the video that I like wrote down. And do you remember in 405 this summer when we read that article about it was about how this one male teacher was talking to his like female students, and they aren't going to college.
Marriage.
Yeah, and it made me think about that conversation that one teacher and the other girl was having, and how I personally thought, like, this whole video, I thought everything was awesome. Like, everyone was so supportive. They were learning about each other. They're keeping like the cultural relevant teaching and everything. But during that video, when she was like, or that part when she was like, I'm really disappointed to hear that. That's what you're doing for yourself. Like, and I was just wait, like, it made me think of that article of like being like, okay, but in her culture, that is what is expected. Like, you need to be like, that's a bummer you're choosing that for yourself. I was just like, no. This video has been so awesome except for that one part.
No, that stood out to me a lot too, and I was just like, I don't think that was okay at all for that teacher to say that to her, and like she was literally looking at the whole situation only from like her point of view, and not even once was she looking over from her perspective and her culture that made it important and valuable. Like that was like, I don't know, dishonoring.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Yeah, it was just like, but yeah, that part stood out to me the most of like what wasn't awesome.
The part that stood out to me the most was when Brandon was talking, like after he had a meeting with his parents and his teachers and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And how his dad decided that he wanted him to like drop out of school and stuff. But I was really glad I stayed through the credits, because I don't know if you saw, but there was a part that said that his dad gave him a second chance, and he got to go back and
I didn't see that.
I'm so happy.
I was so sad.
I know, and it like showed him working, and how he was saying like coming to the U.S. was like a mistake, and how he could have just stayed in Guatemala and got his education. And I found that really sad. But then I was like, as soon as I saw that, I saw a little brief one about another student. I was like, they can't just say about one kid, right?
Yeah. Right.
And so they kind of updated about all the different kids where they were at.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's
but
great.
that, before I saw that like blew me away. I was just like, what? No.
Yeah.
No.
Oh,
Yeah. This whole video just made me really realize that a lot of the times, and it's really hard not to, but we're taught at a very young age that America is this great place and that everyone is so thrilled to come because we're taking in these masses of people. And it's like, even if to us, it's like, they're coming from a war-torn country. Like, they're going to be miserable and so thankful for everything we give them. I don't know, like, it was really, like, just like grief, I feel everyone handles immigration differently. And to me, I feel like a lot of teachers are worried to talk about the country the child came from out of fear, like it was a terrible place for them. But a lot of the kids, loved their home country, as they should, honestly. Like, that's where they grew up. And so I don't know, like, because I realized that my town, completely like different scale, my town has heroin problems, it has racism problems, it's got a lot of problems. But I love my town. It's like this dirty little gross place that I have grown to love. Like,
well, that's like all you know. You know, like before going somewhere else, like that's all you know. So of course you have all those. Like you don't have all that. There's not like just this life without experiences. Like there's wonderful memories too.
And whenever anyone brings up Longview, I'm always like, Longview, and I get super excited. And it's like, I don't know, I feel like we go in thinking that the child's like almost embarrassed from where they came from, and they don't want to talk about it anymore because they're safe and sound in America. And
it's like really they have many more problems here than what they were.
Because like I was interviewing my case study student, and like for some reason I was like nervous to be like, tell me about home, and you're so right, because because I asked him, he's a newcomer, or his first completed year will be this winter. And I was like, so where did you go to school last year? And like for some reason, when I like had my like interview thing, I was like, okay, like if he like shies away from it, like just don't talk about it, you know? And like I was really nervous, and then he like told me everything and was like, yeah, and about his best friends and everything, and I was just like, wait, that's such a good point, because I was like that.
Yeah.
Well, why we have that?
Well,
like why we are like
true. Like some people do have that trauma, and so you're like worried
Just
to bring that
nervous,
up. But yeah, like some kids need that talk. Like they need to know that you care.
Yeah, like
where they
he
came
loved telling me about it, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
this is cool. Like
Yeah.
I don't know why I was nervous.
I don't get why we're. I
I
mean,
still like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe ask you this.
That was a great discussion, you guys. Like,
I love
That's fun.
discussions.
I know.
Awesome.
I really love that.
Anything else, or we were wrapped up? Done?
We're good.
Okay.
I said everything.
Bye, Joy.
Bye.